Growth Committee. Welcome, everyone. It's time for Regional Growth Committee. Today is Thursday, May the 16th, 2024. We are starting just a bit late, 5 minutes late. It is now 9:20, and there's good reason for it, actually. Thankfully, it wasn't a big shutdown of the highway this time, but there was an event that involves a lot of Wasatch Front staff and even mayors right before this. Some of us came pretty darn fast to get here on time. But there will still be people coming, strolling in, and so just be patient with that, please. We see several online. We're going to have introductions for those who've been able to make it into the room right now, and then have a little help to introduce those online too. Do you do that, Rosie? Introducing online like Andrea sometimes does? That's super helpful, I think. Okay, first of all, I'm Laureen Kamalu. I'm actually filling in for the chair. So I'm chair pro tem today. And in this council, I represent all counties in the state of Utah. And let's go to this corner over here and come this direction.
Jordan Chandler, Wasatch Front Regional Council.
Kip Billings, Wasatch Front Regional Council.
Bert Granberg with the Analytics Group at WFRC.
Mayor Brandon Stanger, Clinton City.
Rosie Hernandez, Wasatch Front Regional Council.
I'm Andrew Gruber with WFRC.
Ted Knowlton, WFRC Deputy Director. I'm the RGC point of contact.
Tiffany. Press your button. Just in time.
Tiffany Pocock, UDOT Program Development Director.
Thank you, Tiffany. Hey, let's go over here. Or here, it's fine.
Minu Ablishami, WFRC.
Great.
I just share that Manu is our one of our new interns. We have 2 new interns who are working with us now, and Manu is working with our analytics team, and we're happy to have her.
Nice, welcome.
All right, Josh Reynolds, WFRC.
Madison Aviles, WFRC.
Jory Johnner, WFRC Long Range Planning Group.
Lauren Victor, WFRC.
Dallin Borrowman, Long Range Planning Intern.
And welcome to you as well, Dallin.
Wow, and I know the lady who just entered. Would you like to, Natalie, share who you are? So good to see you.
Natalie Gochner, work at the University of Utah, also serve on the Utah Department of Transportation Commission.
Terrific. So glad you could be here. Let's go online, and Rosie will help us to introduce her.
Online, we have Tony Landon, Allison Stroud, Eric Barney, Kendall Thomas, Kevin Cromar, Kevin Van Tassel, Lauren Palmer, and Mayor Monica Zolstansky.
Terrific. We've excused the Roy Mayor Dan Doy, who's normally the chair of this body, who had a conflict today, which is why I'm filling in for him. Okay. Let's see. Are there any? Oh, okay, Rosie, you did what Jordan would have done. Thank you for that. Also, at the very start of this meeting, we have had the unexpected passing of one of our mayors in Davis County, who also has been helpful to Wasatch Front Regional Council. Our mayor, Howard Madsen, again, Sunset City, just about a week or so ago. And just want to acknowledge him. I have known him for several years, including before I became a county commissioner in January of 2019. He is a very good man, and he will be missed. So that's been a little bit hard for us. Okay, the first action item on the agenda today are the minutes of the Regional Growth Council meeting held March 21st, 2024. And if there is anyone who's had a chance to look those over and I'm ready to take a motion to approve or to correct anything.
So moved.
Thank you. Any second? All right, I will second the motion. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Next up is our public comment. And happy to have anybody in the room take a couple minutes if you're here to make comment, or if we have anyone online, we will watch for you as well. Anyone have a comment for today?
We have other attendees, by the way, who are not showing up in the chat here, members of the public, and none of them have raised their hand to speak,
Okay,
Madam Chair.
very good.
Okay.
Thank you. We'll move on then. Number 3 is an action item, and this is titled Amendment Number 1 to the 2023 through 2050 Regional Transportation Plan. Just a little explanation of what this is. Everyone can see in the room and online. Jory's put up a slide. And to explain and refresh us all, the Regional Transportation Plan is the transportation element of the Wasatch Choice Vision. So Wasatch Front Regional Council adopts the plan in its entirety every 4 years. At our last regional growth meeting in March, we presented this RTP amendment to this body for review, including going over all of the projects in the amendment in detail. Regional Growth Council then authorized the release of the amendment for public comment. Today, we can give the final approval of the amendment and recommend to the full Wasatch Front Regional Council in their next meeting to approve the amendment when they meet next week. And we have Jory Johnner, our long-range planning expert from Wasatch Front Regional Council, who will introduce this item.
Thank you, Commissioner. Jory Johnner, manager of the Long Range Planning Group here at WFRC. As the commissioner mentioned, discussing Amendment 1 to the 2023 Regional Transportation Plan. So briefly, we'll review the amendment process, provide a high-level overview of the projects in this amendment, and then ask for your action to act on the amendment and forward that on to the Wasatch Front Regional Council meeting next week. As a reminder, the detailed presentations have been given to the Regional Growth Committee, which is made up of the planners across the region. We also presented to
TAC?
Yes, the Regional Growth Committee Technical Advisory Committee.
There you go.
Ted.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. And the Regional Growth Committee last March. A complete list of the project and the details are in your packet. So if you want more detail than what I'm giving during this presentation, feel free to open up your packet and look at the projects in detail. So the RTP is developed every 4 years. It has a financial plan and is fiscally constrained, conforms to applicable controls, goals, and budgets on on-road mobile sources for air quality, and then ties to your future land use in the Wasatch Choice Vision. RTP is divided into phases, each about a decade long, for both identifying when projects are needed and when funding is expected to be available between now and 2050. The RTP is the starting place for projects to move forward for prioritization of federal, state, and local funds. If you paid attention to the UDOT Transportation Commission meeting last Friday, they did program quite a bit of money for all modes of transportation, state roads, transit, and active transportation at that meeting, and all those projects are on our regional transportation plan. Periodically, you know what I'm not doing? Clicking both buttons. Geez. All right, caught up. Thank you. Surprised nobody threw something at me. All right. Periodically, adjustments are needed during the planning cycle due to things like changes in funding availability, changes to local or state needs, modification to land use, the outcomes of environmental analysis and other studies, or updated timelines on development of projects. So the amendment process maintains the rigor of the planning process that we go through over a 4-year planning cycle, including review of financial constraints, public input, and air quality conformity. All projects are reviewed by the interagency consultation team, and the financial constraints are reviewed by Federal Highway. So those were both done in January, on January 23rd and 24th. The amendment process for each of the 3 amendments levels are outlined on the right side of the slide, which details how the projects get approved, required comment periods, and air quality conformity determination. I'm going to step you through those for this Amendment 1 just here real quickly. So you can see here On February 21st is when we met with the technical advisory committees that are for Regional Growth Committee. Then we met with the RGC on March 21st to review these projects, and they sent it out, asked us to send it out for public comment, which took place between March 22nd and April 30th. We during that same time sent out all the projects to the county councils of governments that had projects in them. So it was Box Elder County, Weber County, or Box Elder, Davis, and Salt Lake counties received the project lists. During that time also, coordination took place with Mayor Dandoy and Commissioner Kmalu on the level 1 projects. And then Andrew ultimately approved those on April 16th. And then we are now here to review the comments and the projects, send them off to regional council next week, May 16th, which 23rd for regional council. So hopefully that's clear. We've maintained and completed all the process for each of the 3 levels. It's a little complicated when we have them all 3 because they get approved at different times. And level 2 projects I didn't make mention were approved at the last RGC meeting in March. All right. Each amendment level includes a variety of different projects. Most are tied to federal regulations and requirements guiding our project classification. So I mentioned levels 1, 2, and 3. Level 1 are staff modifications. They're smaller projects, including ownership changes, operational changes to roadways, modifications to needs-based phasing, and all active transportation changes, and changes to the Wasatch Choice Vision. So if you ever have any projects that you need changed in our regional transportation plan that fit those categories, those would be a level 1 project. Level 2 are board modifications, collector and minor arterial roadways, non-fixed guideway transit projects, and changes to corridor preservation projects. And then finally, level 3, full amendments are principal arterials, freeways, and fixed guideway transit, which include bus rapid transit, streetcar, front runner, light rail, things of that sort. Amendment number 1, as mentioned, includes all 3 phases, and there are 37 total projects spanning those amendments. So per the amendment process, we prepared a set of technical considerations. As I made mention, we maintain the rigor of our planning process. So we review quite a few different technical considerations as we're evaluating the amendments. And I'll walk you through those here briefly on the next slide. To maintain the robustness of the planning process, the project presented in this amendment will provide both more and safer connectivity by including our active transportation networks, provide more connectivity across barriers like railroads and highways, improve our transit connectivity, and improve access to the Wasatch Choice Centers. For vehicle hours of travel and access to opportunity, we are only showing the benefits of the phase 1 of the RTP, and these numbers show a comparison between our existing RTP and the amendment. Through new connections and increased capacity, we increase access to jobs and education in all 4 counties. However, there is a slight increase in vehicle hours of travel in Davis County with a moderate increase of 2%. And Salt Lake County has less than a 0.5% increase in VHT. So now I'm going to step through the projects themselves. As you can see here, these are the level 1 projects that were approved with the review by RGC Chair and Vice Chair, and then Andrew. They're located in Davis and Salt Lake counties. There were 12 level 1 requests from UDOT local communities in UTA, consisting of 9 active transportation projects and 3 transit projects. As a reminder, these projects were evaluated in detail by the WFRC staff in consultation with the project partners and any affected communities, reviewed by the TACs, presented to the March RGC meeting, and they were coordinated and reviewed and approved on April 16th. The level 2 projects include projects in Davis and Salt Lake County also. There were 12 level 2 projects from local communities, UTA and UDOT, making up 9 roadway projects and 3 transit projects. Again, all reviewed by staff with the communities and any affecting the communities, and reviewed by the tax and approved by RGC at the March meeting on the 21st. Level 3 projects, which will be asking to be moved to the regional council next week for approval. I'll cover those in a little bit more detail, but they are Box Elder, Davis, and Salt Lake County for those projects. And level 3, there are 13 level 3 requests from Farmington City, UDOT, and UTA, made up of 3 transit projects and 9 roadway projects. Again, reviewed by the tax, reviewed by RGC, public comment. So they've been through the entire process and sent out to the COGS. They're also listed in your packet again if you have want more detail. These projects are regionally significant and we'll be asking for that approval. So in detail, let's kind of step through these real quick. Point of the Mountain Transit Amendment includes an update on mode and alignment of the bus rapid transit to a light rail transit, LRT, per the Point of the Mountain Environmental Assessment led by UDOT. The light rail project is recommended to be fiscally constrained in phase 2. The current bus rapid transit is in phase 1 of the RTP, matching the recommendation from the environmental study. The alignment shifted slightly, and you can see that on the map, to accommodate the difference between the BRT and the light rail project. There is a complementary level 2 project to this, which is a phase 1 innovative mobility zone at the Point of the Mountain. And that was approved by RGC at the last meeting. A new Point of the Mountain front runner station associated with strategic double tracking from Draper to Lehigh with funding identified by the legislature is being requested to be added to the RTP. The cost on the slide is for the station and the associated double tracking within the WFRC area. While the total cost is estimated to be about $400 million, with the remainder currently being amended into the Mountain Land Association of Governments long-range transportation plan. The next 2 projects come from the Farmington Station Area Plan. A new station stop or terminal will require further study and will connect to the planned fixed guideway innovative mobility zone project that connects Farmington front runner station to this new station that they're recommending. So they're looking for a new station kind of north of Park Lane there. And then this
Corey,
is
can I
Yes.
just note on this, on Farmington, just for your information, the city of Farmington has submitted a request for approval of a housing and transit reinvestment zone, an HTRZ, to facilitate the development in this area associated with these transportation improvements as well. That's not something that will go to the HTRZ committee, but it's just an interesting note, land use and transportation coming together.
Thank you, Andrew. This is the second half of the project that connects. It's a fixed guideway project connecting the new station to the existing Farmington front runner station at Station Park. The I-15 Farmington to Salt Lake City EIS has been completed and recommends 5 general purpose lanes and an HOT or a high occupancy toll lane. This will be updated from the 4 general purpose and 2 HOT lanes currently in the RTP. The I-15 project will create improved interchanges with multiple safety features for pedestrian and bicycle use, including some of the amendments noted earlier in level 1. So level 1 had quite a few projects that tied to the I-15 project or came from the I-15 project, but they've already been approved. The overall project will be adjusted to comprise of 3 segments. So the current project is the component that's in Davis County and then a component that's in Salt Lake County. The new updated from this amendment is looking to break that into 3 segments: Farmington to 2600 South and Bountiful, and then 2600 South to the Salt Lake County line, and then the Davis County line to 400 South in Salt Lake City. So instead of just having 2 segments, there'll be 3. And this gives UDOT a little bit more flexibility as they look towards implementation of the project, because there is partial funding for the project. I think they're going to pursue some additional in the future. There'll be 5 existing RTP projects being included in the overall project. So instead of seeing the road project, the lanes, and a bunch of interchanges and other improvements, we're now compiling them into those 3 projects I had made mention, the segments. So we're going to recommending removal of the standalone projects. So those include the I-15 managed motorways, which will be incorporated into the project, Parish Lane interchange, the I-215 interchange upgrades. There were 2 of them because it was a 2-tiered process that we had in our current plan. And then the Warm Springs new interchange or improvement in North Salt Lake City. Those will all be included in the project. You just won't see specific projects within the RTP for those. And then the final project in level 3 is a project up on I-15 in Box Elder County that will add 2 miles of passing lanes, both north and southbound, that will help traffic efficiency and increase safety, specifically related to the heavy truck traffic in the area. So any questions, comments on level 3 projects?
Just, may I just re-emphasize a point that Jory already made, and that is that all of the projects that are here before you today are the same as what was presented to you in March and then put out for public comment. There was some public comment, but that hasn't resulted in a modification to the proposed projects. So just as a reminder, if this seems familiar, it's because you're seeing it a second time around per our process.
Thank you, Andrew. It's a very thorough process in case people haven't noticed. And I like that. It's good.
We did go through the 30-day public comment period. We actually, I think it was quite a bit more, 40 days almost. We did have 7 total comments. Most of the comments were related to operations and implementation of projects. These types of issues will be reviewed in detail by UDOT, UTA, or the local communities as the project gets closer to implementation. As an example of one of the comments, and you can see all these, there's a link within the packet that you can click on and see the comment, the actual comment, and then our response to that. But an example of one of these comments was related to the new front runner station at the point of the mountain site, was that this is too close to the existing Draper station. We'll slow down front runner by adding such a closely spaced stop. Front runner stops need to be few and far between and good connections, road, bus, light rail. Don't build the station. So it should be noted that this project does include double tracking associated with the new station to help with operations. We forwarded this comment on, and all the comments on to UDOT and UTA as they work towards implementation, as funding has been identified for this project. And so I'm really confident that both UDOT and UTA have this station location on their radar. It's very similar to the Salt Lake Central and North Temple Station, probably on distance, 2 close stations, and they'll probably deal with it. They will deal with it appropriately in their schedule and timing. So not going to go through all the other comments that we received, but again, you have access to those. Help me, Jordan. One more click. All right. Madam Chair, for the level 3 amendments, again, been reviewed by the tax and RGC, public comment, COGS. I've provided on the screen for your convenience and within your packet a suggested motion. So would hand it back to you for any follow-up or further questions before request for a motion.
Yes, thank you so much. And we've had some other board members able to join in. Welcome to Lauren Palmer, Mayor of Harriman City. Red Ewing, thank you for being here from University of Utah. Carlton Christensen, one of the trustees at UTA. Thank you so much. I think that's still everyone.
While you're at it, we
Yeah,
also
Kevin.
online, may I help
Yes,
you? Okay.
please
We
help
also
me.
have Nicole Bordeaux online from UTA, Dina Blaze from Salt Lake County, Bryce Bird from the Division of Air Quality, Kevin Cromar from the Air Quality Board, Mayor
Mayor
Tran
Tran.
from Kaysville.
Yes,
I think that rounds it out of people in the room and online with members. And,
thank you, Mayor.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you. It's a great group. And I'm sure we have a way above our needed number to vote, right? Okay. Okay, very good. So we've already had a public comment period. So at this point, it is up to, questions. Kevin, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. That was very clear. Not a question for staff, but for other voting committee members. You know, the mode change from bus rapid transit to light rail is quite a bit more expensive. Like it's an increased cost to do that. And as I was looking through all the technical documents from 3 years ago, when bus rapid transit was the preferred alternative, and I'm looking at it again now, the most recent analysis, there was no change in the technical details. Both modes would meet the transportation needs adequately. I was drawn to not just the lower cost of bus rapid transit, but there's more flexibility with it, which I think for a place like Point of the Mountain is needed as it's still under development. And so my question for the other committee members is, I was having a hard time justify the increased cost. Were you able to find something that justifies that increased cost to change the mode from bus rapid transit to light rail?
Thank you for that question. Carlton, and maybe even Tiffany, would you like to share?
I'm probably not the one, I mean, in the sense of, I don't disagree with that assessment. I think that the legislature explicitly directed UDOT to do the work on it. We don't disagree with the outcome either. But as you look at bus rapid transit versus rail, you know, from a cost standpoint, it by far is a much less expensive alternative. However, I think in the long term, and I'm assuming that we're talking about the Point of the Mountain, right?
Yes.
I kind of walked in a little bit late. I think long term, as it develops out and there is higher density in that area, that the use of light rail, however, is not a misuse of that mode by any means. So, but it wasn't at the end of the day, it wasn't a decision, a determination by UTA, other than they did assist in the analysis.
So it was kind of a legislative direction. Is that what you're saying?
It was.
Yeah.
I mean, when the legislature decided to have state-funded projects that are in a fixed guideway, and in that same legislation, it said for the Point of the Mountain that UDOT was to lead that effort.
Okay.
Then it didn't become a UTA decision in the part, other than we did participate in it and we're supportive of the outcome.
Thank you. Is there anything, Tiffany, for you to add?
Yeah, I agree, but also this is still a planning element, and we will be going through, the money was given for additional analysis, and if anything were to move forward, we would be doing more analysis to come.
May I add a brief supplement to that?
Please.
This project has gone through extensive analysis over the years, as Dr. Cromar is noting. Kevin's okay? Okay. And have been in those multiple rounds of analysis, the most recent and most detailed one was, as Carlton is noting, coordinated by the Utah Department of Transportation. So there's an environmental analysis conducted. That's the name of the federal process, federally recognized process. And that process considers a variety of goals. Those are transportation goals, those are environmental goals, those are economic opportunity and development goals. And the study that was conducted with engagement of, partners resulted in this recommended outcome, as is noted here, to do light rail, and that the studies are designed to reach the optimal outcome considering all of those factors. And there can be prioritization in one individual's mind about what are the most important factors to consider. The result of the study in this case is a recommendation for rail at Point of the Mountain. And again, I'm just going to reemphasize something that Tiffany noted. The action here by Regional Growth Committee, the recommendation to the Regional Council to make this amendment to the Regional Transportation Plan is not a final funding decision. This is a planning level decision there is much more work that needs to come, including the identification of revenues to actually build this project before it would happen. Importantly, there are, as Jory noted, preliminary phases to serve this area by transit before this project would happen. So there is time for additional detailed analysis as we go. And Madam Chair, I see Carlton and Jory both looking to supplement.
Please.
Yeah, and I should have probably included this in my comment. We do agree with the phased approach that UDOT is recommending, because the reality is, for a season anyway, that the ridership wouldn't necessitate, a more intensive mode. And so there is effectively a small bus rapid transit connection piece that's anticipated in the initial phase, plus the building out of the front runner station there at Point of the Mountains. So that phasing aspect of it makes entirely a lot of sense.
And Jory, did you have something to add?
I was only going to add that this is the preferred alignment in the study. The study has not been through its own public comment, which is anticipated to take place this summer. So keep your eye out for that if you're interested in continuing to make comments on the mode or any aspects of the project.
Very good. Dr. Ewing.
Yeah, thank you. So I don't disagree with the points that have been made. Bus rapid transit is much less expensive in the immediate term. In the longer term, though, bus rapid transit is more expensive in terms of operation because each bus has an operator, as opposed to light rail, which has one operator for 4 cars or whatever. So I think you have to take into account life cycle. You have to take into account, in addition, the fact that there seems to be a public preference, and it's included in travel demand models, for rail over bus. May be irrational of us to feel that way, but there is actually a factor in mode choice modeling that takes into account the preference for rail. Also, Point of the Mountain, I was on the advisory committee, is the point is going to be very, very dense by our standards, by the standards of this region. And I think of light rail as more appropriate in high density situations than bus rapid transit. Bus rapid transit's wonderful. The Ogden BRT, we've studied Provo-Orem BRT for UTA. We've studied the S line. We've studied the red line along 400 South and so on. So I think light rail, while the initial reaction is, why would you spend more money than you need to provide high quality transit? I think the longer term outlook is much better for light rail, and I'm very enthusiastic about our light rail system as it is today, and look forward to seeing it expanded.
Thank you.
May I
Yes, Natalie.
just ask, read a quick comment there? I want to make sure I'm understanding this. Is another way to say that we can pay a lot now or a lot more later? Okay.
We can pay a lot more now and less later, is what I'm saying. Because 80% of the cost of operating a bus is the driver. So if each bus has its own driver versus light rail,
Got it.
which has one
I didn't say my
driver.
couplet correctly.
Yeah.
I got it.
And the premium.
That it
is-
resonates with me. That makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the premium, whatever the bias comes from, I guess it's from regular bus service being, not high quality transit. Light rail gets extra points for that. And then the last thing, Natalie, is the fact that at higher densities, and we're going to have high densities on that prison site, I hope light rail generally performs better than bus rapid transit.
Yes, Carlton.
The only correction I don't say it's a correction. The only addition I would make is that it's true on the operating cost, on the number of operators, rail, if you have a large amount of ridership, say game day at the University of Utah, one operator on a 4-car track train is much more efficient. When you look at overall costs down the road, because rail actually has a higher state of good repair to it and maintaining the rail and the cars and those things, it's about equal. So it doesn't, if you're doing it from a cost efficiency standpoint, it's not the decision you would make. If you're taking it from high density of ridership standpoint, then the rail at that point is more efficient.
Thank you. Kevin, I can see your brain working. You have any other question or comment to follow up?
No, I mean, the report has cost estimates. It's not like they only gave the upfront cost, it's clear in the technical analysis, the light rail is a more expensive option by quite a bit. The main justification, if you read it, is there's a qualitative inclusion that says some business leaders believe that light rail is better. That's in the technical analysis. And that's the anchor by which the new recommendation comes. That's not really great planning to go off that, there's no citation for that. There's no technical analysis for that. It's kind of someone wants it more. The legislature kind of likes that idea. That's kind of the long and short of what happened here. For us, I mean, I know it's we're at a planning stage here, but our responsibility is to have what's the best plan. And I think it's worth at least giving thought, what is the best plan here? Is it the rail or is it the bus rapid transit? And it sounds like there's some difference of opinion on that.
Yeah, thank you. And I can see your name, but you are from which organization? Air Quality Board, that's right. Thank you. Any other, this has been great discussion. Thank you. All right, so Joy will put back the possible motion if there's someone. Oh, sure.
If I may, would it be possible as we make this motion just to tease out the one amendment for the point of the mountain and vote on that separately from the rest of the amendments, only because we had some discussion on it?
I can answer that question. Kevin, I anticipated you might ask that question. And the answer is we could, but we do not advise doing so. The reason I say that is that part of our role as a metropolitan planning organization when evaluating a regional transportation plan or amendments thereto is we evaluate the regional transportation plan in its entirety for financial constraint being within the anticipated available revenues. And then also for air quality purposes, we evaluate that the regional transportation plan as amended conforms in its entirety with the applicable air quality requirements. So our typical practice, therefore, is to look at a package and confirm that we are in compliance. And that is what we have taken through our technical advisory committees, the air quality interagency consultation team. And so that's why we look holistically, that's our role. So our recommendation would be to not split them apart. That could cause us procedural issues as we go forward.
Thank you for that explanation. That does sound accurate to me as well. All right, with that, I'm happy to take a motion. Yes.
Madam Chair, I make a motion to recommend approval of the level 3 full amendment projects in the air quality conformity determination as found in draft air quality memorandum 42 for amendment number 1 to the 2023-2050 regional transportation plan by the Wasatch Front Regional Council at the May 23rd, 2024 meeting.
I'll second.
All right, there's a motion and a second. Thank you for that. And I don't think we need to do a roll call vote for this one. Okay. And then we do, of course, have voting members online. So I will ask for ayes and nays, and then All of those in favor of this motion, please indicate aye.
Aye.
Aye. Actually, I can't vote. I always forget that. Remember that? Remember? I'm here for UAC. Yeah, I'm used to always voting. Okay.
Value your opinion.
Thank you so much. All right. If there are any who would vote nay, please indicate. And online, are we anything to say? All right. So it is a unanimous vote to go ahead and make this recommendation to the full board. All right. Thank you. And thank you, Jory.
Thank you.
That was a lot to cover, but it was very clear and organized. Thank you. Okay. Next up on the agenda is a really fun topic. I will say something briefly and then Ted will tee it up even better. But number 4 is the potential, because it's not all the way official, potential 2034 Olympics and our region's aspirations. And I just want to, Ted encouraged me, and I'm happy to do this, to just reflect slightly on the first Olympics. Hopefully most of you got to experience that in 2002 in Salt Lake City. My family did. And it was amazing. And I did notice, even though this was long before I was in public service, I was raising 5 kids with my husband and had a business of my own. I saw the prep. I saw the prep and all the infrastructure and all of the building of venues. I mean, it was a big lead up for a long time. And yes, sorry, that's okay.
That one's not working good.
Okay. What I've been happy about since 2002 and that amazing time for our state and our nation is the lasting impact, how the venues have been kept up so much that they can be used again. And I'm going to say that some of the best looking infrastructure that we are still using and valuing, and that's kind of crucial today, came from that time. And it has those emblems where you can kind of see things were made just a little bit nicer to designate that this was part of the Olympics, and we're using it for generations. That's wise planning, and it's also great for morale of a state, I would say. Generations can remember that even when they weren't alive in 2002. So anyway, it is, that's something we're going to discuss today just a little bit. We're not going to take too much time, right, Ted? But
I don't know.
we'll see. So today we are going to discuss leveraging the Olympics to have a lasting positive impact on the future of our region. And I'm excited to welcome Colin Hilton. That's you. Colin Hilton, the Chief Executive Officer of the Utah Olympic Legacy Foundation. We're so glad you could be with us. He will also participate with us in this discussion. And Ted, go ahead and say a little bit more.
Okay, I'll just say a few opening thoughts on this before turning to Hilton. And thank you for being here. Appreciate that. The idea with this conversation is that we talk about, as a regional growth committee, about the things that we might embark upon collaboratively that help us make the most of this great opportunity. This work at WFRC is kind of unusual because it's this bridging this gap between local government and regional agencies, and it's sort of this space of how do we do great things through collaboration. And so put that a little bit in your head as we unpack this. If you go to the next slide, Jordan. I wasn't here in the last Olympics, but I'm so excited to be here for this Olympics. Hopefully I'm still here and nothing crazy happens. But I know it's 10 or 12 years out. But isn't it interesting how Utah has such a high level of support for the Olympics compared to other places? And I think part of the reason why is that we know it's our time to be seen. It's when the world shines its spotlight on us. Now, ask yourself, do you think that that's just the venue communities that the light shines itself on? It's not just the venue communities, right? It's Utah's Olympics. It is certainly the venue communities, and we're going to hear about that, but it's way more than that. So when the light shines back on us in 2034, what will the world see? And what do we then take advantage of and enjoy for years and years after that? The Olympics, I know, Colin, you'll hit this note, is not really just about the 2 weeks. Oh boy, glorious 2 weeks, but you get married not for the wedding day, right? Okay, so go to the next slide if you would. So the question is, how do we catalyze the Olympic Games for long-term change? Now look at these images. On the lower left, those are Olympians celebrating, but they're on the brand new red or blue line, which we leveraged the Olympics to get that built fast. The next pin, it says I-15 luge run, right? You remember what construction was like during leading up to the Olympics, but we got I-15 improvements done fast. Trails in our communities, even the Rice-Eccles West Stadium improvement, the timing of that was, we leveraged the Olympics. Those are just some examples. Go to one more slide. And I'll just highlight that in our region, 90% of our communities are not hosting an event. 99 statewide, 99% of our communities are not hosting an event, but it's Utah's games. So as we have this conversation, let's think about, you know, I-15, blue line, red line. Those are examples of things that benefit us well beyond event communities. They have a lasting legacy. And then I think that I just want to highlight, we're going to do this in two parts. One more slide, Jordan. The first part is, let's think about the actual games, the event locations. Let's talk about that, and then we'll go more broadly than that. And Colin will join us on the whole conversation, but I'm really excited to turn the baton. I bet you are too, for me to blessedly stop talking. And you know, the games, we haven't been awarded it yet, but boy, we're tantalizingly close. Colin, I'll turn the time to you.
Well, very nice to be here today. I love planning. So you guys seem like a group of planners. So I am excited to give you a bit of an update on what we're doing. And as we go through the slides here, just to sort of echo what Ted just said, for me, I've been around these major international events. It's what brought me to Utah. The most fun for me is what these big international events allow communities to grow and communities to rally around a big cause. And that's what happened in '02. And we have one of the vision statements of hosting a next games is elevating communities. And so if you go to the next slide, please. Before we go to the future, let me just give you my one take about what the '02 games did for Utah in Colin's lens here. We staged a great games because we overcame a huge obstacle, and that was 9/11. 5 months after, we put on an event that unified the world. I've never seen a world so unified since that point. It increased infrastructure improvements, much like Ted mentioned. It boosted athlete training, prompted major event hosting, elevated awareness and image of Utah, and generated a sense of pride, a sense of community, and provided some civic benefits. Next slide, please. You may ask, what are we doing right now? You were talking about 2030, 2034, which is it? You know, we've been going at this since 2011. Fraser Bullock, myself, many others in the state have been trying to position getting a games back for a number of reasons. This just offers the timeline. There is 2 more virtual meetings that are happening at the end of this month. We're presenting to the International Sport Federations, winter sport. This is the International Ski Federation, Hockey Federation, Skating Union, etc. At the end of June, there's another virtual presentation to the executive board of the International Olympic Committee, and then a full in-person presentation in Paris on June 24th, where there will be an election to very much likely award the games to Utah. And July 24th. Thank you, which is obviously very notable. We kind of asked to do it on July 24th. So next slide.
You asked to do it on July 24th and they said yes, which we can take as a positive sign, I think.
I would say so, yes.
Hey, Colin, my understanding is it's time certain as well.
It is,
So you think of the time difference
Yep.
and you think of the 24th of July and camping and the parade setting up and 3 a.m. is the moment.
yes. So that, if you want to get up that early.
3 a.m. Utah time? Oh, great.
Well, it's perfect.
There will be
because
celebrations throughout the whole day.
Look what the town will do because it's already gathered.
Right.
Yeah, it's already sleeping out and it's already, I don't know if you've ever been at the start of the parade right before it happens, but at 3 a.m. it's a hopping place.
Andrew, I'll bring you some pizza at 10 o'clock.
So that's exciting. That's the next steps. And everybody goes, my God, we've been at this for so long, but the end is near. The official award on July 24th is what we're gearing up for. We hope everything goes well. For future games, sort of the why, we have 100% of existing facilities, or to use a temporary facility like the Salt Palace to do curling on a temporary ice rink. There is this huge high level of community support. And I would argue a lot of that's because we have figured out what to do with legacy venues after a 3-week sporting event. We had a plan. Utah really created that idea for the world and of having legacy and continued use, and that they're not just for elite athletes, they're community recreation centers. So my foundation looks after the 3 venues that nobody in their right mind should run after games because they lose lots of money. But we had a surplus from the O2 games that allows this to be subsidized. The Olympic Oval in Kearns, the Olympic Park in Summit County, and the Soldier Hollow Nordic Center in the Heber Valley. So I work in 3 very distinct Utah communities, and it's great because the communities, they're a part of the fabric of the community.
Colin, can I
yep.
just say?
Yeah.
Because I'm a county official, when counties host other all of the counties in Utah, all 29, but other events are held here, people from out of state are still touring those places and really enjoying them. And they are still really beautifully kept.
And part of our philosophy from the Legacy Foundation, all ages, all ability levels. And again, that they're community centers just as much as they train these high-level athletes. So that is sort of Utah's unique approach, and why you don't see those images of, facilities falling apart as you see in other countries. We had a plan. We're implementing against a really good plan that leaders in the late 80s and early 90s put together. Natalie sits on my board of directors, and I love telling the story that in 1994, a whole bunch of community leaders got together with the state officials and passed a resolution at the state legislature creating the powers and purposes of a legacy foundation. That was 8 years before the games occurred. And for me, that was very notable. There's a long run up to a 2034 games, but that allows for opportunities to advance key initiatives. Utah is excited and ready to engage a next generation of Utahns in that experience of a games. I think we calculated, given our young state, that almost approaching 40% of people in 2034 will have not been around for the O2 games, or since for our games, and weren't here to experience that. The games would be planned in partnership, and that's a key word you'll hear from our team going through this. Next slide, please. I'm going to sort of rapidly go through this. Ted told me 10 minutes. The impact of the Paralympic Games, Olympic and Paralympic Games, needs to extend far beyond the games themselves. Over the next 10 years, the games can be a catalyst to expand the reach of sport, build more unity, more hope, and create a lasting change for generations to come. Next slide, please. keep going, please. So there's 3 pillars, and if you go through, yep. Elevating communities, elevating winter sport, and elevating the games experience. We're gonna focus on elevating communities for this group. Next slide, and the next one. We have a variety of communities involved. This is kind of a hard to read map. We will improve this, but this shows a central downtown Olympic Village at the University of Utah and less than an hour's drive to every venue. That is unheard of in the world of hosting an Olympic and Paralympic Games. So we go from Snow Basin in the Ogden-Weber region to Provo on the south end for the Provo Peaks Arena, a whole cluster around Salt Lake City, and a cluster in the Wasatch back in Heber Valley and Park City. Next slide. This is the Paralympic map. It's not every venue, but the Paralympic Games are typically 10 days after the Olympic Games. So it extends the big celebration. And honestly, it's one of the most rewarding events in the stories of these athletes. If anybody remembers in '02, these were memorable stories of athletes from all around the world competing in adaptive sport.
I got to go to the opening ceremony of the Paralympics. It was incredible, equally as amazing as the regular opening ceremonies.
My brother-in-law is a Paralympic cross-country skier, and
Awesome.
I came from out of state to go to the Paralympic Games, not to the Olympic Games, and I agree, it was fabulous.
And Utah, for the Paralympics, was the first country to have one committee of planners do the Olympic and Paralympic Games. That was always done with separate entities. They did them together, but they had separate groups planning. So we were the first, and there's a few new things that we look to do that maybe blend the 2 games together a little bit more. Next slide. I personally negotiated all the venue use agreements, whether from the ski resorts to the Delta Center to the Maverick Center. We're already done with that. I have signed agreements with all of those venues. LA is still working on 10 more to complete their plan for 28 games. Okay, next slide. Just to talk about, what the games are doing and getting people planning already. We have this cluster of venues in downtown Salt Lake that is pretty amazing. It was amazing in '02, and I think will even be more amazing. So I know you guys are into the infrastructure planning a bit, so let me just continue on the next slide to point out that during a next games, this is sort of what we call our overlay plans to create at what we called Salt Lake Olympic Square in '02. We'll have a similar Salt Lake City zone here. So you see the Delta Center in the blue. You see the Salt Palace, which was our International Broadcast Center and main media center. And you see Block 85, which is a parking lot for going to the Jazz games, but we transformed that into a metals plaza, and we will actually bring a mountain sport to an urban setting with big air competition on a temporary 10-story tall scaffold structure and do those big events in a downtown setting. Obviously, there's talk of a sport entertainment district. Don't look at the location as where it's going. This is just our thought in the past, and I think that's obviously having lots of discussion at the moment. Next slide, please. And again, there's these visions. You've seen this of Smith Entertainment Group's vision of redoing the Delta Center, creating a gathering spot in downtown. And so that we will adapt to how that plan, we may even help shape it to allow perhaps our downtown gathering to take advantage of this. Next slide, please. Yep.
Just right there, super fast. I went to a conference in Atlanta, the Housing First Conference, happens every other year. I was there in April. I did not know there was a Centennial Park.
Oh, yeah.
And I have about 50 pictures that I already sent to Ted and Andrew about the legacy and all walks of life continuing to enjoy that big, beautiful park and what's located there.
And
it's amazing. And I definitely was thinking about what might happen here.
Yep. And I worked those games, the summer games in Atlanta in '96. And yes, that is one of their key legacy elements. Next slide.
Colin, can
Yep.
I also do a quick question on that? Jordan, if you'll go back one slide, can you comment a little on what was the bid committee's rationale for a tight cluster? It might sound like an obvious question, but does that help us be more competitive? And is it more clustered than it was in '02? Just some of these.
I would say it's similar because we're using mostly the same venues in '02, even despite we have 40% more events. So the busier, the venues that we are using again are going to be very much busier on a daily basis. More disciplined ski and snowboards, got Big Air and ski cross, border cross, and all sorts of new activities that have adapted over the last 20 years. The compactness is a real advantage because it gives the athletes a better experience. And having the University of Utah back in '02, gentlemen from U of U might correct me on the numbers, but back in 2002, there was only about 4,000 student housing beds, and that's exactly what we needed. The next games is about that, but by the time 2034 comes around, they're projecting anywhere from 10 to 12,000 beds on the campus there. And for us, the challenge is figuring out how we keep classes going. And last time we delayed the start of the semester, we're looking at a similar thing to do there. But the other thing it provides us an opportunity for is an experience for the athletes' families. So as we talk to athletes about how do we put on a games that are a little bit different, most of the athletes who are hyper-focused on their competition always are having their parents and family members, hey, where do we stay? What do we do for tickets? How do we, move around? So unique to our offering is an athlete's family village and services to help out the athletes, which I think is very appropriate for our Utah games. And the approach of providing an experience and the compactness, Ted, is very much a huge asset for how we would do a games and have the athletes only have to travel within an hour to get to a venue from one village. In Milan Cortina for 2026 Olympic and Paralympic Winter Games, they have 5 villages spread out with 6-hour drives between some of the venues. So for us, we are highlighting this geographic anomaly and a terrific airport and access of transportation. And if you go to the next couple of slides, Provo, obviously on the Wasatch Front, that's a great example of using a community recreation center and transforming it into a 10,000 seat temporary Olympic venue. And so we aren't building anything new. That's one of our key sustainable approaches. Next, obviously up in Snow Basin, Weber County, we're creating unique transportation paths down the mountain here. That's the downhill runs for the men and the women, which were created in '02 and we will use again. Next slide. So this is the last slide, I promised, Ted, of, again, what planned efforts can be tied to the games. And my statement that I'm doing to many local communities around Utah right now, it really depends on what your local community's vision is. And we as games organizers want to understand what those priorities are for the state or city or counties, and how can the games be a catalyst to allow those initiatives to get done. My favorite, I used to work in government back right after the games, and I understand the benefit of having a date certain in the future. Deadlines are good, especially for government. And when we are going to host the world, what do we want to highlight of what our communities achieved? And can that date certain provide an impetus to get certain key priorities done? The games organizers, we don't want to tell everybody what those priorities are. We want to hear what the communities and the state's key initiatives are that we can help. And some of those could be air quality, public transit, environmental sustainability. Some regions want more traditional economic development. Other regions want less people. They don't want more growth. They want to have sustainable tourism. That's the Summit County Park City area. Heber Valley is trying to figure out if they're a bedroom community or a tourism community, and maybe it's a blend. And so these are, and we have 10 years to work with communities to do that. Some of the infrastructure is highlighting transportation and gathering locations. And as you mentioned before, there is host venue communities, but then there's other communities where we might just have celebration areas or a cultural Olympiad where we are highlighting our arts and culture elements. During the O2 games, we did rodeo events at the Weber County Fairgrounds.
Davis.
Yep.
That's how the
Thank
fairground
you.
started in
There we
Davis
go.
County.
Yep. And so those are the things that the games provide an opportunity for. And that's where we're excited to say, what are those public benefits that the games can help you all with? And for me, the one that, as Ted said, pose a question, over and over, we know affordable housing is a problem for everybody. And when we get asked, can the games help with that? I'm scratching my head still about how, and it's a good point to say that we don't think the games can solve every issue in communities. And I started saying we can't help with affordable housing, but I don't like that answer, because we have the village and we don't have to build housing for athletes and families. But I still think the games can help there somehow. I just don't have the good idea. And that's where I would love any thoughts and feedback of how the games can help in that component. Fraser Bullock would be kicking me under the table now because he said, we can't solve everything. But I'm one of these glass half full guys. I'm an eternal optimist. How can we do that with the games? I don't know, and I would love your thoughts.
Great. So this slide tees up our discussion. You've
Yep.
gotten through all your slides. Thank you. Oh my goodness. I'll let anyone who wishes to ask and brainstorm. That's the purpose of this part of the agenda. My first service, my first public service was as a city planning commissioner where I live. And really glad I started there. And one thing I'm hearing loud and clear and that I feel in my core is just exactly what you said. We can't afford to have this part of our city or our state gentrify and become even more unaffordable, if that makes sense. There's got to be a way that we work all the way together so that we have the diverse array and that all walks of life can continue to enjoy that part of our city, part of our state. Yeah, anyway, I feel that, and I'm so glad that you haven't ruled that out. So one other little thing is that you talked about the staging of places, and for those who went to Snow Basin for any of the events up there, there was a really big area, which is where you had to park way down in, the border of Davis and Weber County, and so that's part of my memory. That was one other event that our family went to, and how to do that really well. It was done really well. Our daughter just had forgotten to bring her snow pants that day, and I was concerned about that.
And that is, again, some of the intrigue of park and rides,
Yeah.
BRT systems, front runner and double tracking front runner to get more capacity. Those things, we are hearing those through separate meetings with UTA and UDOT, and transportation is a focus. But again, this is sort of a tease to say we're open to hearing, and we have game sponsors, we have interest to align the goals of the games with a patchwork of different community interests around the state.
Thank you. Okay.
Commissioner, so I have slides after this, which are just to generate a discussion. And let me tell you how they're organized. They're organized around 3 topics: transportation, parks and public spaces, and city and town centers. And I'm telling you that because Colin did such a beautiful job of queuing this up, and this is a broader slide than that. And, this question of what are the initiatives that we want to, through collaboration, we're not going to solve, but maybe we can make a meaningful difference on. I think it's a really great question for us together. And you see some of those under possible community initiatives. And would love to hear from the committee, what's your reaction and what's going on in your mind as you think about how do we leverage this great opportunity?
I'll just start. I was one where I didn't give an opportunity to be a witness or be a part of those games because I wasn't living in the state at the time. But I'm of that generation. I think a lot of us grew up with Michael Phelps, and so we're diehard Olympic fans. And I was planning on going to the China opening ceremonies if there was a way, and of course COVID happened. I am going to make Paris's opening, and I just think, you know, we are so far ahead of the game thanks to you and, you know, teams that have been planning these kind of things. And it's so amazing that we have such a diverse population here that speaks all of these languages, where from a cultural standpoint, I would love to be able to see when you guys do this, let's have a night featuring each of the different ethnicities that come to Utah, where we can maybe split it around the towns and say, hey, okay, we're going to celebrate people from Albania this day, or we're going to celebrate people from Vietnam this day. And then all of the people that are connected to those communities can come out. And so now it's even a greater bringing together of all of the people here and a chance to highlight all of these other countries that are now coming to Utah.
No, I'm glad you brought that up, because one of the really interesting things we did in the O2 games leading up to it was called Gold Medal School program. It was an education program where each school sort of adopted a country and learned about that, and the kids got really into it. And we also found attachés in Utah to work with each of the delegations coming, and obviously with those our ties to those cultural backgrounds of different countries. These are things that make the games more than a sporting event.
And congrats on having venues. I was just in LA not too long ago watching guys stand there with a flag on a sidewalk while they're doing repairs, trying to get, you know, traffic from LAX to a parking garage to then be able to get to the new stadium. And I'm like, and their time's clicking, and just to know that so much of that's already in place just is amazing. So let's make it happen.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, Carlson.
Yeah.
And just online people, be thinking too, we can watch for those who have comments online. Go ahead.
Well, for me, it's super nostalgic. And if you're free on the evening of the 23rd in my backyard at Christensen Acres, we have our pre-celebration party going. And then we'll come and join Andrew down on the street at 3 o'clock in the morning and bring some dinner to him.
Sounds like we're camping in your backyard.
Yeah. Well, we're at least going to start off there in the early evenings, and with my 95 foreign flags. But that, for me, it's really nostalgic because I got elected about 4 years before the 2002 games and sat through a number of discussions leading up to it. And to be honest, there was a little bit of friction even in the late summer of 2002 with venue cities and over security and those kind of things. And while I never would have wanted it to happen, the one outcome of 9/11 is that 2 weeks later, we had agreements about how we would interact. And for non-venue cities, for example, they sent their officers and they got post-training as part of it. They got training that they would never have gotten in a much more sophisticated way, and communities came together and figured out. And the good news is we don't have to recreate those challenges. You know, that framework, as Colin and others have pointed out, is there. And I thought in the recent visit from the IOC, one of the really interesting thoughts that came from one of their leading committee members is, don't start planning the logistics now, start planning how you as a community can be engaged in some of the ways that Colin is talking about, and even some of the ideas that Mayor Stenger shared. You know, I think there's, I represented a fairly low income neighborhood, and we figured out a way for them to have, an Olympic experience. And because I knew a lot of them would not make it down, even downtown to the venues. And so I think, having some of those kind of longer thoughts and educational ways. I will say, even since the sort of inclination of the announcement has come out, some would say, well, I'm going to just advance this project and calling it an Olympic project. And I look at them like, well, tell me how this actually fits into the games. Like, what you have to have is a really good project that would add to that. And then what I saw in leading up to 2002 is that something that was there on its own merit, that had gone through the studies and things, the funding got moved up a little quicker, and those things were put into place. And just from our transit standpoint, we're in a much stronger position than we have. We have some things on the horizon that I think will complement, the experience and capacity. But we also have a larger population. I'm guessing we have an extra, Reed probably knows this number better than I do, but I would guess that we have at least another, or Natalie, an extra million people than we had in '02. And they're going to interact in a different way. And we're just a larger community. And so figuring out how those work out and logistics, but people always, step up. And I think there, the nice thing about, the downside to 34 is I'm like, okay, I'm going to be close to 70. So I don't know, but the good news about it is that it does gives us some very legitimate time to do some very thoughtful and very strategic that will be complemented. And hopefully, as Colin pointed out, government does do better when it has some deadlines there to cause you to sort of dig in and do that. And I think having that layer of planning will make it not only a good experience, for the visitors and in our community during those weeks, but the longer lasting piece that stays with us as a community afterwards. So
Maybe I could do this. Jordan, will you go to the next slide and keep going? One more. If you think about this space, this discussion, and where the opportunity of the Regional Growth Committee and the Wasatch Front Regional Council, I think it's a spot where it's a great place to focus on physical changes or the physical form of our place in the future. And that's part of the reason why you see those components: transportation, parks and public spaces, city and town centers. Obviously, that doesn't capture everything, but that's a really good spot for the collaboration that is set at WFRC. And you see that embodied in the Wasatch Choice Vision. But maybe before I get into this, I'd ask you to think about, and maybe Colin, you can comment on this, what would help us show well in the world? What are those things that would make us be very impressive
And
in that when the spotlight is on it? Sorry.
absolutely. So Colin and then Tiffany, I saw you prepare too.
You may be searching for a specific project. I would actually say what the International Olympic Committee would love to see. They believe these games can be transformative. And they look for locations that not just put on a great games, but took that hosting responsibility in a way that they transformed things outside of a sporting event. So I would just say in a general sense, what they would love to see us do is not, have the games fit their vision, but how the games fit into the vision of how Utah wants to be represented in key projects, initiatives, etc. They would be thrilled.
Transformative for Olympics and perhaps transformative for the way we interact as a world community?
Yes, and show an example of, look what Utah did to improve and manage some of those growth challenges that they were going through.
Okay.
And have the games help with that, because you'll hear us very much say, we don't want these games to be the reason there is an infrastructure project, that the games. We think that if there are projects going that the games can actually be a catalyst for, that's great. But fiscally and responsibly, on the money side, we don't want to build infrastructure, but for a 3-week sporting event.
Okay. Very good. And
And so I'm finding that I've been taking too much time moving through this as well, but I really want to hit, if you don't mind, these 3 bases and get Regional Growth Committee feedback on that. Let's just start with transportation. That's our core space, right? When you think of how we might use the Olympics to leverage better transportation, what are some things that come to mind here that you think, maybe we ought to focus on, fill in the blank? Could be what we focus on, how we focus on it, or what have you.
Tiffany was going to say something and she's with UDOT. So does that fit into what you were going to say? Say what you wanted to say and then whatever else.
Well, I think what I was going to say fits in with what what you're asking us here, Ted, which is, I think Utahns, I love that you use the word transportation, and coming from the Department of Transportation, we often get a lot of highway and sort of big infrastructure thoughts, but I love the meetings that we're having about people wanting to use transit, and the vision of our trail network fits and gets braided in with the Olympics really well, I think, where people do want to take transit and use active transportation to get to these wonderful destinations in the future, not just for this 3-week event.
And I'll be the bad guy in the room to say we can fast track most of the planning for the big Cottonwood canyons and some of these other projects that would alleviate a lot of that traffic and that issue if it does come. So.
A nice comment. I will note that there's no events in Big and Little Cottonwood Canyon, FYI.
Or little. But those are, I think, are the transportation projects that really we need to be looking at of what projects can we fast track that will have the biggest impact to make it so it's easy to move people around for the games.
Because people will come before, during, and after and want to do some of those fun things in the area.
Madam Chair, can I interrupt just for a moment to note that Councilmember Stroud online asked a question whether the International Olympic Committee will be requiring air quality standards, and if so, are we within their guidelines, and if not, what should we be doing to prepare for these standards? And she noted that the Wasatch Front Regional Council has an air quality conformity requirement. So perhaps Colin or Kevin is on the air quality board, or Bryce Bird, do you want to comment on that?
I'm happy to defer the first comment. No. They have very high goals related to environmental sustainability in a broad statement. We share in those interests to meet what the word keeps changing. They're in terms of climate reliable games is one of the things that they're looking at for us to be in a location that snow will be around, that we are respecting the environment and we are achieving goals that, again, align with the different regions' goals. We have been working with Utah Clean Energy, with a variety of partners to look at ways that we don't just check a box and buy carbon offsets to hit a certain thing. We don't want to just plant a tree in Africa. We actually want to do, impactful community things. Utah Clean Energy is electrifying, not just bus fleets, but homes and converting those type of dynamics. Those are the things we are hearing from different communities of how we can to do this and meet the standards that the International Olympic Committee expects.
Thank you. That was a good question. Thanks for catching it. And Kevin, you were going to say something too.
Yeah, I wanted to address Ted's question here and ask Colin a question along these lines. Nothing was more transformative for our transportation network than the Olympics. I mean, you go back to like the federal highway system and Promontory Point, but it changed our entire transportation network. There are two factors that allowed that to happen that's not currently present. One of them is we had a much better federal local split at that time. So we could take on much more transportation projects in a short period of time than we could otherwise. The other one is we had Bob Bennett, who was a real champion for that, was able to push through a lot of that federal funding. We don't really have a Bob Bennett right now. So as we think about this question, how do we take into account those different conditions? We don't have a favorable federal local split, and we don't really have that Bob Bennett champion. How do we take that into account as we think about leveraging the Olympics for transportation improvements?
Great question, thanks. Carlton.
There are obviously still federal discretionary grants. We're very optimistic on Front Runner and have recently met some requirements there, and that's not an insignificant amount of money. I think one of the things that's transpired in the last couple of years is that the legislature has begun to add a consistent funding source that can be used toward transit. And it is helping to create a local share, if you will, of projects and match. And, you know, and that amount is likely to grow over the next few years. And that at least gives us the ability to program, you know, in cooperation with UDOT, some of those projects as well. And then I'm hopeful that a few counties, in addition to Utah County, will pass their fifth transit tax.
So for the sake of time, we'll keep moving, but if you have additional thoughts on this, please share them after the meeting as well. Would love to hear this. This is intended to give us all collectively, you know, some things to work on. It's not just a nice conversation, but it can cue up actions coming out of this. What about parks and public spaces? How can we use Olympics to leverage better parks and public spaces? Now, a lot of that is local, but if you think about, go to the one more slide, I'll highlight a couple of things that are collaborative spaces using public assets to create better parks and public space amenities, like a trail along a power line, or collaborative work between, in the case on the right image, collaborative work with South Jordan and Sully County. It might be open space improvements that go between communities. It might be establishing a broader vision for the big things that we want to do in the coming generation for parks and public spaces. Thoughts on, go to the next slide if you would. How do we use the Olympics to leverage better parks and public spaces? I know it's a big general question, but what are your thoughts on this?
I've got one where, again, it probably is not the long lasting you're looking for, but to the point of community engagement, I think of like Farmington Station. To me, that would be an amazing place to hold watch parties where,
It would be.
you know, you have a watch party for opening ceremonies, closing, and maybe some awards ceremonies where, to Carlton's point, there's some communities that aren't going to drive down. They don't want to deal with the traffic, but yet if we've got some areas, town centers, big parks where we can bring that in, have those events, now all of a sudden we've brought everybody together and now it's a Utah thing rather than a Salt Lake thing.
Thank you so much. I totally can see what you just said. Online? Oh, yes, Megan.
If you don't mind, Madam Chair, I just want to make a comment, you know, just as with transportation, you know, maybe you don't plan your urban core around the Olympics or your city center, but this is really an example of like the ultimate community gathering, you know, for both people that are local and people that are visiting. And you saw that, you know, 1 hour in each direction from Salt Lake City map. I mean, this will touch each of your communities. So if your community does have a desire to think about what would this ultimate gathering look like in our city, we can help you with that. So come reach out and we can talk about planning around, you know, community gathering in general, maybe with the Olympics as this inspirational moment.
Yes, and I do have a couple quick things which are pertinent to this group and hopefully good to hear. We talk a lot about functional turf. We can't get rid of all grass. That downtowns and places with lots of concrete, they need functional turf. And Carlton would, and some of you would know way better than I know, what are the existing parks in that area that are being used right now and could be better used right now and after the Olympics. And there's also folks who are unhoused. And I'm going to represent my fellow Commissioner Bob Stevenson, who says, you know, all eyes are going to be on Salt Lake City for that. And we want to just tell people, oh, you can't be here during the games. No, we've got to figure that out, right? It's a big, big challenge, but an opportunity for us with the games. We will be looked at for that too. Yeah.
I just want to give an example from a Wasatch back community. I got to give some props to the Heber Valley governments. They are doing a downtown redevelopment plan. They're imagining a new downtown. They also obviously are looking at a potential bypass from a transportation to go around their city. But when we looked at how we had the world coming into the Heber Valley, we created a temporary parking lot across from the Heber Airport. And people drove there, went to the venue, bused back to the temporary parking lot, and then drove back to Salt Lake. So giving them, as they are reimagining their downtown and creating amphitheaters and parks, I said, if you have a central space of parking near the downtown, when everybody drives to that park and ride, that's not a temporary lot out in the middle of nowhere, if it's near your urban core, they will come early and after the event and stay and make a celebration and have them enjoy the community. And so I tease that as an example where they need that for when we do big events, the Sheepdog Classic at Soldier Hollow, the Border Collies herding sheep. We have thousands of people and we need like a regular event park and ride system to support that. So that's an option that will solve everyday event needs for that particular area. For communities, as you mentioned, going to Snow Basin, we use that gravel pit at the base of the where 84 comes out of the canyon. Is there a long-term solution of creating park and rides, bus rapid transit, whatever, going to those particular venues, or just in general, this infrastructure that it's not being done for the games is needed every day. And so the notion of transportation, celebration areas, I think is a wonderful thing, especially if it's intended for everyday need.
Thank you so much. And Ted's taken us to that last question, city and town
Yes.
centers. Go ahead.
Where do we celebrate? And you know, obviously, Salt Lake City is the namesake of the games. It will be called the Salt Lake Games. And then the big cluster is downtown, and it highlights a basic, go back one slide, that a basic, you know, fact that in a big way, our city and town centers are the face of Utah for the Olympics. They're where celebrations will occur and where we will be really seen. And it's kind of the way it is with every community. If you go to the next slide, every community is sort of known, the identity of the community is reflected in its most well-known center, like Holiday Village, Mill Creek City Center, and new ones that we're contemplating, which include The Point and Vineyards Utah City. So this is like a golden age in Utah, really, of the enhancement of city and town centers. How do the Olympics fit in? Go to the next slide. You know, there's infrastructure ways that can tie in. That can include stadiums, hypothetically, not so hypothetically. It can include transportation improvements. Look at how downtown Salt Lake City on the south end changed with the creation of the red line up to the University of Utah. It can include the way we queue up the vitality of our centers with the way we develop streets. So there's this collaborative space between infrastructure and the health of our centers, which I think is a good spot for our collaborative work together. So if you go to the next slide, I want to highlight a couple things and invite people to chime in here. Natalie, you are the expert on exploring this link between the health of our centers like downtown Salt Lake City and sports facilities. I don't know if this is something you want to comment and cue up how we ought to think about this as we think about leveraging the Olympics.
I guess what I would say, and I've been open about this with Ted and others at Wasatch Front Regional Council, but one of the main things is to recognize that Salt Lake City has a premier place among all cities in terms of urban thinking and in terms of hosting the games and being a center for sports, entertainment, culture. So the point being that it's not like you have cities and towns. You have an urban center, which is downtown Salt Lake City, and then you have wonderful city centers and towns. And I just think recognizing that hierarchy is incredibly important, because if you have a hollowed out downtown that has been disinvested in, that jobs have left and people have left and commerce has left, that is a really bad front porch for the games. And so, and what's beautiful is that the state sees that and recognizes that. I had the wonderful experience about a month ago of hearing a rural legislator say, so goes downtown, so goes the Utah economy. I was thought, wow, that was powerful.
Yeah.
And so there's this broad recognition right now in our state that urban centers are vital to our reputation and how we're viewed by the world, and in fact, our regional economy. And then just one last point on that, to think about, if you think about it, why is it that having the Jazz downtown and having NHL downtown and having Meadows Plaza downtown, in the games, why is that so critical? The reason it's so critical is that those things are unique. A Broadway theater is unique. And if you disperse those things, you lose all those concentration effects. If you centralize them and have the transportation backbone that works for it, you create magic. And in the literature, it would say that these things are monopolies. And in fact, you want, and that's why they're so important to downtown. That's why you can't put a Broadway theater in Sandy, because you must have the monopoly in your core, because otherwise, well, because only monopolies will thrive in the core, because the economic pressures are so great to pull jobs and people and commerce from the core. It's expensive, it's trickier to develop. And so in my mind, our state has done a really incredible job in the last, since the games, in preserving Salt Lake City. It is a constant investment battle, and I think we're meeting the test.
That's a great explanation. And what we don't want to have is a doom loop, right? Isn't that the thing that has been happening in other big cities in the US? Yeah, horrible. Yeah, anything else in this, or should we?
Well, boy, there's never going to be a bigger spotlight than the Olympic Games on downtown Salt Lake City. And if downtown Salt Lake City doesn't sing, it's going to be a black eye for everybody. And it will sing, and it's going to raise up the whole state. I'm just emphasizing your point. I'll note that there's a lot of work on the power district where Major League Baseball might come. Obviously, there's the top of the headlines is all about what might happen with downtown. I know there's a lot of interest in that. We'll come back to that with Regional Growth Committee if there is interest in that. But I also do want to highlight, the city and town centers are a core component of our collaborative work. That's a centerpiece of the Wasatch Choice Vision. If you go to the next slide, it's the identity of lots of our communities. And I want to highlight downtown Kaysville. Mayor Tran, I know that Kaysville is focused on a healthy, vibrant Main Street. Do you want to comment and maybe think about how it links in with Olympics, or if there is a link?
Sure. I'd love to do that. So Kaysville was awarded gratefully. We were very thankful for it. In March, a grant for the Transportation and Land Use Connection through Wasatch Front Regional Council, which was fantastic for Kaysville, $130,000. It gives us money to work on our small area plan design for Kaysville. And as we're talking about the vibrancy and the importance of keeping our communities vibrant, you know, Kaysville's not a host city, obviously, but we're on the path to a host city. Snow Basin is just up the street and through a canyon from us. And so we're hoping that as the Olympics come, we have an opportunity to get in front of this as well. You know, we're already planning and we're already trying to transform our city, but this just gives us another opportunity and another incentive to really highlight and showcase what we're doing well here. And even the Layton City Temple Open House, for example, it's in Layton, you know, a city over, but it has increased revenue in sales tax for Kaysville. The restaurants are busier in Kaysville, the gas stations are busier as people are going through. Talked to a couple of restaurant owners and store owners, and they said it's been great for business. And so really the Olympics can transform all of our communities that are along the path, and really in Utah as we put our best foot forward. And so we're excited for the opportunity to be able to revitalize that through this grant, and excited to highlight things going well in Kaysville.
Thank you so much, Mayor Tran. And I'm going to dismount with a slide. And I'm sorry that this conversation went long, but also not terribly sorry, since I think it's important and I've really enjoyed it. But keep going. We don't have time for this. How do we use the Olympics to leverage our city and town centers more as a conversation? But I wanted to leave this up and maybe just any reaction to this. This is just a sort of a generalized approach of how we are thinking about moving forward. And this is a little different than we have done it before. Shall we, with communities and other organizations, highlight the catalyzing opportunity of the Olympics, even in the next few months, presume after a bid is formalized? Second, we're thinking it makes sense to go to each individual community and just talk about aspirational changes that communities might be interested in that are collaborative by nature. And if there are some project ideas that come up through that conversation, number three, we can convene a conversation between communities to talk about collaborative efforts. Number three. So that 2 and 3 is a little different. We can talk a little bit more about that. And then if there are project ideas or what have you that come through the mix on that, we would fold them into the Wasatch Choice Vision. I wanted to leave that with you. This is a little different kind of a process here at WFRC that kind of builds on this conversation. And if there's any reaction to that, would love it. But we can come back to this in future conversations.
There's a mayor's event in Davis County, so that's why some folks had to leave. And yes, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Back to you, Commissioner. I appreciate the conversation, and I know we have more business to attend to here today.
Which you said that this would be kind of a springboard. I mean, the years are going to go fast. They just go faster and faster for me. But there's still a lot of meetings and a lot of opportunity to put those groups together. And I love that you emphasized, even when we planned this meeting, this would all be collaborative work. You said the same thing, Colin. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you. And remember, this is a fun topic. It's
Yes.
bipartisan. It's one of these things that we intend to make this always a fun, inspirational topic as we go forward. And so plan more time for this topic.
Yes, we sure will. Thank you. All right. We'll try to move swiftly through the last part of our agenda. This number 5, Housing Inventory Show and Tell. Wasatch Front Regional Council develops and maintains an extensive set of data to support planning at every level. Today, we're going to hear about new data that relates to perhaps our biggest topic, and we all know housing is the big topic. And so we have Bert Granberg, the director of the analytics group, who will share this important new resource. Thank you, Bert.
Good morning. Switching gears a little bit, we're going to share a little bit of information about the Housing Inventory Explorer tool. And I'm going to be joined by Josh Reynolds. And I guess I'm going to use the clicker here. We've got a new web tool that's available for Salt Lake, Davis, and Weber County at the moment. And the goal of this web tool is to convey housing trends in the region. It's very easy to understand sort of your local neighborhood. It's harder to see the broader regional picture in terms of our housing stock and how it's changed over time. And this tool all started with a great question that was posed a number of years ago, which was, what percentage of new housing in Salt Lake City has been built within walking distance of a transit station? And we're going to look at that in just a second. I was like, we should know that. We should know that for any period of time for different types of housing. We should know it for different areas of the region. And this very closely aligns with the land use modeling work that we do. We've got to know what the existing conditions are across the region in order to get our land use models to work. So we built this web tool. It leverages data from the county assessors and tells us a little bit about how the housing picture up and down the Wasatch Front is changing in terms of density, types of housing, that kind of thing. And Josh is gonna walk us through that. So, okay.
All right, cool. Thanks, Bert, for the intro, and thanks for your time. We always enjoy showing off what we're cooking up in analytics. Here's a screenshot of our new housing app.
Our tall guy, can everybody hear okay? Sadly, you may have to stoop. I don't know.
Let me angle it up a little bit. Is that
Oh,
a
I'm
little
so
better?
sorry. I hate it when people have to stoop to the mic. I love your height. Okay.
All right. So here's a screenshot of the app. As you can see, the housing points or housing units are represented as dots on the map. You'll also notice a couple panels on either side of the screenshot. And one of the main kind of superpowers of the app is its ability to let you generate custom queries on the fly on the housing data. Some of these queries include geographic filters such as cities, counties, the Wasatch Choice centers, of course. And you can also filter by the different center types and some of our housing types, any combination of those, such as a single family, townhomes, apartments, condos, you name it. You can also filter by a housing unit's proximity to other features on the map, such as transit stations, freeway exits, or parks, trailheads, and trails. And then the final filter allows you to filter the housing data by time. So if you provide a begin year and end year, you can filter the data accordingly. And if you kind of slide the bar across, you can also create like a time lapse sort of effect, which is pretty neat. And then the next key feature of this application are the interactive charts. These charts dynamically update on the fly according to whatever query you have active. You can also change the functionality of these charts to update according to whatever points are on the map. So if your area of study is different than like, a city or county, it's really useful for that as well. And then the last key feature, so you may have noticed in the screenshot that the points on the map changed colors. So you can choose to symbolize these housing points by different symbologies. So first we had these points symbolized by housing type. Right now they're colored by built decade, and then you can also color them by residential density or valuation per acre. And so, we don't know who said this stat. I'm just going to call it bird stat for now. So, 80% of new housing units in Salt Lake in the last 25 years are within a 10-minute walk of transit. So I'm going to walk you through how you could validate a statement like that using the app. Since we want to know how many units are in Salt Lake City, you would first select Salt Lake in the city filter. And then to figure out how many units were built in the last 25 years, since the data, or I guess the latest year we have data for is 2022, you would go back to the year 1997 for that 25-year window. And then you would notice if this were live, the charts would be kind of spinning and updating on the fly. And you can see here, the total units updates to 22,984 units. Um, so, oops, too far. So now to kind of complete that analysis, we would add an additional filter to find out how many of those units are within a 10-minute walk of transit or half mile. And so we would add 3 more filters. So half mile within tracks, front runner, and a BRT station. And then we would also target or toggle the use to match any of those conditions. And the app would then update on the fly to show you that 18,505 units are within a half mile walk. And so you do some quick division and you'd come up with that 80% number in Bert's great stat. So, so like quick analyses like these are very easy to do in this application. However, if you want to do something more complex, this data is also available for download at the Utah Geospatial Resource Center's website. And I'll leave you with one last Easter egg. So if you're very observant, you might notice the URL at the top. It's pretty small, but it keeps just getting longer and longer. It actually remembers all of the selections you do as you're doing your analysis. So you could potentially email this to your colleagues or embed it in your own website.
That's terrific. Thank you for pointing that out.
Yeah. And just a couple more ideas you could explore. So some things I've observed is one wonderful stat I've noticed is that 93% of housing units in the WFRC region happen to be within a half mile walk of a park or a trail or trailhead. Pretty neat. And I've also been able to observe kind of the decline of condo development and sort of the rise in townhome development in recent years. So here's just a couple more ideas you could look into. And then just some real quick closing thoughts. So we plan on adding sub-regions, which would just be another geography, maybe smaller than counties, but larger than cities that you could aggregate the housing data to. And then later this year, we plan on updating the housing database with kind of the latest housing data, kind of just get you, let you be able to do more current analyses. And then we also hope to add Utah and Washington County data at some point to the application. And then just some additional resources. I mentioned you can download the data from the Utah Geospatial Resource Center. And also don't forget about our statewide housing and household and jobs forecast viewer that's hosted on unifiedplan.org. We have a brand new maps and data landing page, so go check it out. And then the U of U Gardner Policy Institute does a lot of great work on housing, employment, and just other demographic related stuff. So I have to do a plug for them as well. So if you have any questions about this app, you can contact myself or Bert. And with that, I'll turn it back to you, Commissioner.
Josh, thank you so much. And Bert, there's a bunch of people here and online who are all about data. And we need to be. Is there any question from the group?
I'll note that as always, we will send these out.
Yes, thank you for that. And Carlton?
I just was thinking, and I don't know if Bert or Josh, if it has the ability to do like a geographic corridor to do the analysis, like if you could draw a line around something, because I was just thinking in line of the discussions that we're having with, Mayor Palmer and his colleagues in that area, and thinking about density and density around corridors and what's the logical, transit, because this one's looking at the existing status, but if you were trying to create and think about where those corridors ought to evolve, this would be a really powerful tool and, save you from a lot of money with consultants.
Yeah,
that I think could be helpful.
great question. My response would be, like the data is downloadable. So if you've got someone who works with geographic information, GIS, they should be able to do that for you. But I also like the suggestion, and we will take that into consideration for the next iteration of this web application. And just like parting thought, this application and all the interactive maps that we put together to support our work and also the region's understanding of the Wasatch Front landscape. You can find them at maps.wfrc.org is our map gallery. This is the first one featured there. It's been pretty popular, but we're always thinking about what to do next, and that's a great suggestion. We'll file that away, Carlton.
Can I, one closing, thank you guys, one closing leading question. If any of our communities were interested in going through this with you in more detail, our members, the staff, would you be willing to do that for them?
Of course, happy to help.
Great, thank you.
Terrific. Thank you again. Appreciate amazing tools. Okay, one last item. Ted added it without telling me. But it sounds like it's important. And so quick minute here to let everybody know about the completion of a landmark new comprehensive safety action plan and initiative. And so it's Kip Billings who's going to help us. He leads the Wasatch Front Regional Council safety activities. And Kip, it's a big deal. It is a big deal. Thank you. Go ahead and share.
Thank you, Commissioner. I was bringing to this meeting a brief summary of our comprehensive safety action plan. And as the Olympic discussion proceeded, thought, well, we'll need to do the Reader's Digest version of the brief summary. And so now I'm prepared to give you the cliff notes of the Reader's Digest version of the summary. Last month at the Transcom meeting, the Transcom on behalf of the council adopted our comprehensive safety action plan. So I wanted to make you aware that that is available. It's on the website under programs, comprehensive safety action plan. And within that website, there's over 1,700 pages of analysis, data, charts and graphs and safety strategies. This is, we want this to be a resource to your communities for all of your transportation planning efforts, whether it's Olympic related or otherwise. The incentive for preparing this study was so communities could qualify for Safe Streets for All grants. But those opportunities are somewhat limited in number. All of our roadway planning projects can be enhanced with safety elements. And so this identifies what the needs are, lays out strategies that you can apply, gives you some cost parameters. We're going to meet with the technical advisory committees in July for about 10 minutes. So we will cover all 1,700 pages with your at the TAC meeting. We just want to make you aware that this is available to you so you and your staff will take advantage of this resource.
Kip, that's amazing. And it is a big deal. I'm on the National Association of Counties Transportation Subcommittee, so I've known about this Safety for All grants for a while. And I look forward to all of us considering safety as really good planners do. Yes.
Commissioner, parting thought. Andrew asked the question, the leading question to Josh and Bert about that piece, but anytime any community hears something from WFRC and thinks, I'd like a deeper dive on that, we would love to accommodate that. And especially on the comprehensive safety action plan as an example. And I'll just highlight that there's a lot of locally specific components of that plan. There's depth if you're a community and you take a look at that for that. And so as you look at that, hopefully you do know that we are at the ready if you want to do a deeper dive.
People should come to you all more and more and more and more, right? I think that's one of my big takeaways, how much I learned from you from when I was just a city planning commissioner. I learned from Wasatch Front Regional Council. All right, so that takes us through all of the main items on the agenda. Our next meeting is August 15th of 2024 for this particular committee. And again, a full Wasatch Front Regional Council board meeting next week, Thursday at 1:30. Yes. And if there is no other urgent, I don't see anyone's eyes telling me there's urgent something else. And so I have the power to just adjourn. I've learned that. I don't have to ask for a motion. And so we will adjourn at 11:20. And thank you so much, everyone who's participated today. Good meeting.